Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Hit the Pacecar live here with, well, we're not live anymore, but here we are with the Pacecar boys. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify, we would appreciate a like, comment, follow, subscribe, share, do whatever you got to do. But of course, every week I am joined by the Pacecar boys of Cory and Tyler. Cory, how are we doing today?
Life's good, just grinding through the work week, ready for more racing, man.
Well, it's a bye week for the Cup Series, but we do head to the Rockingham, North Carolina Speedway this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. We got Cletus out there. I'm looking forward to this weekend. But Tyler, it's also Easter weekend. It is a holiday. But Tyler, how are we doing today?
Doing good, man. It's been a good weekend. Like Cory said, just getting through this work week, man.
Yeah, just pushing through, trying to survive. I definitely feel it. It's our own version of Drive to Survive, but it isn't Netflix slop. So it's our own version of Drive to Survive, I would say. But let's get into the topics that we have at hand. And of course, we will start this week with the weekend rundown, where we go through the big events, the big topics from the previous weekend of racing. And of course, this past weekend we had Martinsville Speedway, the paperclip, the short track. I don't like that nickname. The short track. I don't like. I think that's silly. But we had some great racing. I'd say on Saturday, Sunday. We had racing technically on Sunday. Wasn't necessarily great racing, but Saturday was a great show. I'd say we had the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series on Saturday. I think Junior Motorsports really stole the show. Lee Pulliam and Justin Allgaier, of course, and we'll talk more about Lee and Justin Allgaier in a little bit. But once again, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, in my opinion, just put on a fantastic show, as they do every single time we go to Martinsville. Cory, I know you're not necessarily the biggest fan of Martinsville, but I've heard you talk about how you enjoy the O'Reilly Series races there. It's just really the Cup Series races. How did we feel about the O'Reilly Series race that we had on Saturday?
I kind of completely disagree. I did not enjoy Saturday's race at all.
Oh,
We
you
got
did
30
not.
laps of green flag racing, and it was just caution and caution laps the entire race. And then, I don't know, that it was irritating because it was mostly cautions the entire time. That for me it wasn't entertaining as much as I was expecting it to be, and I was the one that hyped it up last show. But yeah, no, Saturday was a little disappointing because we only had like 32 laps. The longest green flag run was 32 laps, and then it was just 10 laps caution, 20 laps caution, 15 laps caution. There was no, I wouldn't say strategy, but you never got to see who could pass, who could be good on a long run. It was just kind of like, well, hopefully you had a good restart, and then the next caution happened.
That's definitely a fair point. We didn't have a lot of long green flag runs. I think the only part of the race I wasn't too happy with was that middle portion of the race. We had a couple of back to back cautions in the middle portion of the race. The end of the race, we definitely had some cautions, but I think that's, for me, I'm just kind of used to it, I guess, at Martinsville, especially in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Definitely wasn't the best race we've had there, for sure, in the O'Reilly Series, but overall, I personally liked it. I enjoyed the race. There was passing, there was some racing. I do agree with your point, though, on the fact that we didn't have really any strategy. We didn't have any long green flag runs in the race, so I can get behind that part of it. And Tyler, I guess what were your thoughts on the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race? Take your bias out of it. Justin Allgaier, we know Justin Allgaier won again, and you'll get your time. You'll get your time to talk about him. But how did you feel about the rest of the race?
I mean, like you guys said, it was a little rough. No green flag run there was definitely rough. I mean, it was a parking lot on that front stretch more than once. So I don't know. It's not what we wanted it to be. We I think we all expected that series to actually show out and put on one hell of a race and the best race of the weekend, and it definitely wasn't the best race of the weekend. So I don't know. Wasn't a great one.
What was the best race of the weekend?
I love the Cup Series race this weekend.
Wow. Okay, we're gonna have more conversation about that in a little bit for sure. Yeah, because I personally I didn't really like. It was better if you look throughout the rest of the field. And we'll talk more in depth about the Cup Series race. It was better. There was more passing throughout the field, but Denny really just burned the house down, I think, for most of that race. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race on Saturday at Martinsville Speedway? All right, let's get into this. I felt like Lee Pulliam was the story of the whole weekend, in my opinion. I think he was the biggest story of the whole weekend. He might not have ended up being the most talked about thing by the end of the weekend, but in my opinion, he should be. I think it was the most important, coolest thing that we saw all weekend. We saw him get a little nervous, get a little emotional in his interview. He had a moment with Dale Jr. on pit road after the race. That was really cool to see. He ran top 5 all race long. He actually did really good with his pit stops. If he didn't screw up, because he screwed up a couple of restarts, obviously he had the one where he said he spun his tires. It looked like he missed a shift, but what he said that he just badly spun his tires on that one and ended up taking out Carson Quaffle and half the field. That was a big error on his part. But other than the restarts, I think he was phenomenal and honestly probably would have won the race if he didn't have the issues on the restarts. Because I felt like Justin Allgaier was king all day, but by the time that Lee Pulliam really figured out how to race this car, I felt like he was the best car out there at the end of this race. But just, yeah, he really screwed up a couple of restarts at the very end. And we saw this with Bubba Pollard for Junior Motorsports. Now we see it with Lee Pulliam. We need to continue to get these talented short track racers, and like Josh Berry is the prime example. We need to continue to get some of these local short track drivers racing. It's just really difficult nowadays with the way sponsorship works and the way money works with these cars. Like Nick Sanchez, for example, is going to race to the Rock, and we'll talk briefly about that a little more later. But it's really, this sport is driven by really money and sponsorship pretty much 100%. It doesn't really, the skill matters to a certain degree, but overall it doesn't really matter. But we saw Bubba Pollard do so well at Richmond for Junior Motorsports. Now we see Lee Pulliam do so well for Junior Motorsports at Martinsville. Dale Earnhardt Jr., I have so much respect for that guy. He's probably my favorite person in NASCAR in general right now, just because of how much he gives back, how much he does for the sport. He tries to keep that old school flair, that old school mentality in the sport. I really respect him for putting Lee Pulliam in the car, because he probably really had to convince Jerky Boys to get on Lee's car, and I don't think Jerky Boys regrets it, because Jerky Boys probably got more promotion this past weekend than they've probably ever had, other than maybe Junior mentioning them on social media quite a bit, because I know they're a personal sponsor for Dale Jr. and for Junior Motorsports down in the Cars Tour and stuff like that. But just honestly really awesome to see. I want to see more of this. We are going to see another Cars Tour driver in the Rockingham race. Connor Hall will be racing for Nice, so I'm very excited about that. I just like having these local short track guys get their opportunities. That's one of the big reasons why I'm such a big fan of the Ram race for the seat and Minnie Tyrell being able to come in there. Minnie Tyrell hasn't had the greatest start to the year, but Ram as a whole hasn't done great yet in the Truck Series. They're still trying to figure it out. They don't even have a sim. They don't even have a simulation over there. But just to see some of these local short track guys get their opportunities, it's awesome. I would love to see Landon Huffman get out there and get an opportunity. Some of these other local short track guys as well. I think it would be really cool. I guess I'll start with Tyler on this, because Tyler's a big time Dale Jr. fan, and he knows a lot about how NASCAR used to be, where it was more about talent, and the team would just the team would find a sponsor for you. They would find money for you if you had the talent. Nowadays, the driver has to bring the sponsorship and the money to the team, and I'm just not a big fan of that. And I just like the way Junior runs things, and I want Lee Pulliam. First of all, I want Lee Pulliam to get more opportunities, and I just want local short track guys to get more opportunities as well. But Tyler, first of all, how did we feel about Lee's performance on Saturday, the moments he had on pit road with his interview in Junior, and just overall about these very talented local short track asphalt guys getting more opportunities in the sport.
He is 100% what we need in the sport. I mean, those guys are going to bring more fans and more views to the sport than anybody else ever will. I mean, you're keeping dreams alive when you have a short track guy that actually makes it to one of these series. So, I mean, for all of that to happen was beyond huge for NASCAR, and they
Yeah.
don't even realize it. And then Junior to realize how important it is to have one of these guys and to keep the dream alive in one of his cars, not just a car in NASCAR, right? But one of the top cars in NASCAR. To go out there and actually compete means everything. That guy was out there and he killed it. I mean, a couple of mistakes, absolutely, because we don't practice for whatever god awful reason. But besides that, I mean, if the man would have had another 2 days in the car, there's a high chance he would have won that race. 100%, I believe he would have won that race. I was rooting, sitting there at work, rooting him on, telling everybody we're about to see a miracle happen. If he would have won that race, we would have seen NASCAR turn on its head for a hot minute. Like, it would have proved talent means more than everything else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because drivers like Lee Pulliam, like Bubba Pollards, if drivers like that can come into the sport and win like that, win immediately, I don't know if it would be an overnight shift in how drivers are hired and put onto race teams, but it would definitely at least change the mindset and at least open up the door for some of these very talented drivers that may not have rides, like a Nick Sanchez, like a Cory like these local short track guys, like a Landon Huffman, like some of these dirt guys that might not be as well known. It just really opens up the door, I think, for the drivers that have the talent, and not necessarily the drivers that just have money stuck up their ass. So I'm a big fan of having talent over money. That's just how the way I look at it. And I think most NASCAR fans look at it that way. I know a lot of these people that are high up for these race teams are business people, not necessarily racing people. So I do understand where these people are coming from. Is like, well, this guy has all the talent, but how the hell do we pay for the car? How do we pay for the bills? Like, this guy doesn't have any money. So I do understand that sentiment, but if you take a chance on one of these guys like Ali Pulliam, the money will just come in later, because Jerky Boys, I think, got more attention this past weekend than they've ever had, and I think that's really cool. Cory, how did we feel about Lee Pulliam's performance, and how do we overall just feel about these local short track guys? Or really, I know you're a more of a dirt guy compared to an asphalt guy. Like, they're included in this. How do you feel about these just drivers that are very talented, not necessarily having an opportunity, but might get an opportunity because of what Dale Jr. is doing with Junior Motorsports right now?
I think it's awesome. Like, I think what Lee Pulliam did was very impressive. I think, well, he was in the top 5 for most of the day. Second, if he didn't have that one mistake, he's fighting for the win with Allgaier. Like,
For sure.
having no experience and then jumping in and doing that is beyond impressive. And then hearing how humble he was during the race, running second, telling Dale Jr., he's like, I'm just trying my best. And then Dale's just sitting there like, well, you're in second, so you're doing a darn good job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't say that specifically, but it was pretty much the same thing. He's like, he held himself to a high standard, and that got him almost a win and a top 5 with his first race in the O'Reilly series this year. It's like, it's impressive. Like, I hope more drivers get shots like that in good equipment so they get the respect they deserve, they get the acknowledgement they deserve, and they can show how impressive and how talented they are on a regular basis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would just love to see some of these drivers get more opportunities. And then, yeah, I think Lee in his head throughout the whole entire weekend was, if I don't go out there and kick ass, get a top 5, win the race or something like that, I'm probably never going to get an opportunity to do this again. And honestly, he's probably right, unless Junior wants to fork over all the cash for the whole weekend, which he might be willing to do. It wouldn't surprise me. But Lee knew coming into the weekend, if he doesn't go out there and just kick ass and perform as well as he could, he might not get another opportunity to do this again. Like, look at Bubba Pollard. Bubba Pollard was fantastic at Richmond, but he's yet to get back on the car as well. So it's just very difficult for these drivers that don't really have a lot of money or really any sponsorship to do what Lee and Bubba Pollard were able to do. And the only reason they were able to do that is because Dale Earnhardt Jr. gave them a hell of an opportunity. And I can't commend Dale Earnhardt Jr. enough. That guy's a badass. I love Jr. for everything he's done since retiring. He's, in my opinion, he's still the face of the sport, and I really respect what he did. And then just seeing Lee Pulliam on pit road in that interview, you can tell he was nervous. He kept on screwing with his hat. He was trying to hold in emotion as best he can. You can tell that he wanted to just cry his eyes out. He was just so happy about how well he did. So it was just honestly a really beautiful moment for the sport, and hopefully we see more of this in the future. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Lee Pulliam's performance, and how do you feel about local short track guys, local dirt guys, any driver that's extremely talented getting more opportunities, even if they don't have sponsorship or money to their name? All right, let's move on to our race winner, the Alligator, Lil Gator, Justin Allgaier. I actually saw a picture of Justin Allgaier. Lil Gator was hanging out with Big Gator. Him and his dad were taking pictures with the grandfather clock. I think that was the first time I've actually seen a picture. I probably have, just haven't noticed it before. I think it was like the first time I saw a picture of Big Gator, of Justin Allgaier's dad, and I thought that was pretty cool. But just to see Justin Allgaier get another win, I don't mind it. He was probably the best car all race long, and he did what he had to do at the end of this race, just hit every restart absolutely perfectly. Obviously, he had the help from Lee kind of screwing up some of these late restarts for sure. But Justin Allgaier, and he has almost a 100-point advantage right now. Justin Allgaier I think he has a 92-point advantage right now on second in points. He is racing his ass off. He is kicking all sorts of ass. 3 wins in the last 4 races. He's on like a Tyler Reddick type of run right now. He's doing phenomenal. And I'm going to send it to Tyler. Tyler, I know you're the massive Lil Gator fan. How are we feeling how he started this year? He's obviously the championship favorite, but at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he locks up the championship before Miami. And no one could really keep up with him. I think Sheldon's had a great start of the year. Jesse Love had a great start. Last couple weeks have been not as strong, but just a phenomenal start from Justin Allgaier. How are we feeling, Tyler?
And man, can't feel any better at this point. Like you said, Tyler Reddick type run. Like, it's crazy that nobody's running their mouths about Justin right now, because he's doing just as good, if not better, in my opinion, because he's just every weekend he's there. He is right there. He's going to the championship. I don't think there's anybody good enough in the field right now and consistent enough to even give him a shot at a try, because no, it's his championship. It's another championship year. I feel like packing my bags. We're heading to Miami, boys.
That's the second straight week that Tyler's really pushing Miami at this point. It's the second straight week. He's like, hey, let's go. And I might have to start looking it up myself, because I want to be there if Denny wins the championship, So I might have to look that up myself, because we were talking about that for sure last year on potentially going to Miami. But Allgaier he just looks phenomenal. He looks unstoppable at this point. I really think the only person that could beat Justin Allgaier is Justin Allgaier. I think Justin Allgaier is the only person that could beat Justin Allgaier right now, because we've seen him do it in the past. That's why he only had, and it's also because the old system as well. It wasn't very forgiving when it came to certain things. So, but that's why Justin Allgaier only has the one championship. I feel like he probably should have more than one championship. But Cory, how are we feeling about Allgaier's just phenomenal start to the season?
I think I said it a few weeks ago that I think it's his championship to lose. I think he's Mr. Consistent, and now he's consistently winning so far to start the year. Like you said, 100-point advantage. Like, he's always up there. He's always in the championship conversation, but his start to the year should scare absolutely everybody in that series, because it's going to be hard to run it down if he's constantly in the top 3 every week. And Justin always is. So it's good to see because I think everyone's a fan of Justin. I think Justin is probably the fan favorite on Saturday. I don't know
For
if
sure.
that from my, but yeah, I don't know. It's awesome to see. I love Justin. It's good to see him do well, and I hope he can get a second championship.
Yeah, I'm gonna be very surprised if Allgaier doesn't win the champ. I mean, things could change. Like teams get better throughout the year, so maybe there's a team that has a great summer run or something like that. But at this point, if you ask me right now, I would be very surprised if Allgaier doesn't win the championship in Miami in November. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Justin Allgaier just having the hot hand, winning 3 out of the last 4 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series races? All right, let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series as we had the Cookout 400 at Martinsville this past weekend. Some of you may have heard our podcast last week where we were discussing what we could potentially see at Martinsville. And I predicted personally that it was going to be the best race we've seen at Martinsville in this generation of car for the Cup Series. I'd probably still give the edge to last year or the year before, probably last year's fall race at Martinsville over this race. It wasn't quite as good as I thought it was going to be. The horsepower, in my opinion, didn't make as big of a difference as I thought it would. One thing I noticed with the horsepower that it did make a difference with was the ability to save tires, because we saw drivers like Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin hanging out in fourth gear and kind of saving their tires a little bit. So I guess the horsepower helped with that. The tire fall off was, if there was a tire difference, that was a big thing for sure, because tires were definitely falling off pretty hard, but no one really got on deferring strategies throughout the day because of the way the cautions were timed, because we had the stage cautions, other than, of course, the last stage, and that's how we ended up having Chase Elliott win the race with Alan Gustafson making the call to have him come down pit lane, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But overall, I'd say I was disappointed in the race. I'm not going to say there wasn't any passing either. If you're watching on TV, you may have thought that there wasn't any passing. But if you paid attention to the scoreboard, or if you're watching in-car cameras and stuff like that, there was not a shitload, but I would say there's a decent amount of passing. Denny Hamlin was just whooping the field all race long, so we didn't really see any changes for the lead. And once again, in my opinion, Fox dropped the ball this week. Fox was complete ass cheeks this past weekend with their coverage 2 straight weeks, maybe even 4, because we didn't watch Vegas or Phoenix because we were at the racetrack, so we didn't get to watch the broadcast. So maybe it's 3 or 4 straight weeks where they've just been asked with coverage. But past 2 weeks, it's been really, really bad, I would say. But nonetheless, overall, I wouldn't say it was a horrible race, but overall, I wouldn't say it was a very good race either. I'm definitely a little disappointed with it. And I'm going to send it to Tyler first on this one, because Tyler kind of gave us a little sneak peek into what his thoughts were of the Cookout 400. What did you think about the race as a whole, Tyler? Let me know your thoughts here.
I mean, the race as a whole was definitely an old school Martinsville race in my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong, but like it was old school. You had somebody out there that's a complete pro that knows how to drive these cars, knows how to save his tires, knows exactly what he's doing, dominating the race. He had enough extra horsepower to actually dominate. It wasn't just a bullshit everybody driving a circle race. Like it was true domination. So I don't know. Personally, it was an old school race that I enjoyed watching. Do we need more passing? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the passing wasn't horrible, but
It
do
was
we need
better.
more? Always. We always need more passing, but it was definitely better. I mean, the horsepower makes a difference in some type of dynamic in a way that most people didn't realize. I mean, if you watch Justin, that was probably the best show for everybody to see exactly like how much horsepower made a difference, right? Because Justin didn't realize, because he doesn't drive this car all the time, nobody let him in on how fast the fall off was. So Justin would get those tires switched out and would be out there just flooring it, passing everybody. And then in a matter of 15, 20 laps, have his complete fall off and then be being passed again. So, I mean, if you went all out, you could pass people for sure. 100% it was there. But how long would the car last is the problem that we've all, been arguing about for 2-3 years now. So, I mean, in my opinion, it was probably the best Martinsville race we've had in this car.
Yeah, I would have it in a debate with the semifinal race last year, but that's also just because of the pressure of it being the semifinal race, last race to Phoenix, so everybody's racing a little bit harder. So that's probably why it's even a debate for me. I'd probably give the slight edge to that race last year, but I would agree with you that the passing was definitely better. We could use more. Personally, I think the way that this race could have been even better, two out of the three things I think can be done to make this race even better. The two things that I think could be done to make this race a little bit better would have been, we talked about it last week, stage cautions. If we didn't have stage cautions, I think we would have seen more strategy when it comes to the tires, because I think the tires there was crazy fall off with the tires for sure, as you were just mentioning, Tyler. There was crazy fall off with the tires, but throughout the day, pretty much everybody was on the same strategy all race long up until that final stage. Like, I really enjoyed the final stage. It was the first two stages that I didn't like at all. I hated the first two stages because we didn't see a lot of stuff. We saw passing throughout the field here and there, but not as much as I would like personally. That third stage though was pretty great because we saw deferring tire strategies. A lot of people are on different strategies. So removing the stage cautions, I really think for short tracks they should even up the horsepower even more. You can't get enough horsepower. Like, I would like for them to go to 900. Like, I would like for them to even increase the horsepower a little bit more, because I think the horsepower made a slight difference, but not as much as I was expecting, not as much as I wanted. So maybe even a bigger increase in horsepower. And those are the two things that I can see NASCAR changing. And then the third thing, I don't really know if they can make better. When you can't do a bump and run in this car. You just can't. The bump and runs are dead in this car. It's either wreck them out of the way, or you're honestly giving them a boost. You're honestly giving them a boost if you give them a bump. So you don't even really want to bump them. You either wreck them or you don't. That's really how it is with this car, unfortunately. But Cory, what were your thoughts on the Cookout 400 as a whole?
I kind of told you last week that Martinsville, I don't look forward to watching it just because this car has made it awful, in my opinion. Like you said, the first two stages, there's no point in watching. I dozed off for a minute during the race because it was no point in watching. You could pass, but only a select few could pass, and everyone's running the same time. If you're in 20th, you're not getting to 18th. If you're lucky, you're getting to 18th, and then your tires are worn out because you tried to pass somebody for 10 laps. Like, this car, you can't bump and run. No one runs through the field at Martinsville like the old days. Like, and it didn't happen like that all the time during the old days, but it's still just like this car. We're trying to figure it out, but Martinsville is where it's the least entertaining fan wise, because it's just the same top five for most of the race. Like, and you could come back 200 laps later and you're like, oh, they switched one position. Like, there's no strategy involved in the first 200 or 300 laps. Like, to me, it's not Martinsville's fault, but this car has just made Martinsville boring to watch. And then, but it could also be said that it's a step in the right direction with the horsepower change. It's still just,
For sure.
of all of the races to watch throughout the year, Martinsville is one of the worst.
Yeah, it's just really unfortunate, I would say, because Martinsville would put on the barn burners. Martinsville always put on a barn burner back in the old car. It would always be a fantastic race. Like, in whatever car, honestly, any car that we've ever had at Martinsville, it's put on a great race. And I was talking about it in my post-race show over on my YouTube channel, or if you're on Spotify, it's on Spotify for car on the hauler. literally any single car that you have on this track, whether it's an O'Reilly Series car, a truck, wheel and modified car, a late model, even the Miatas, every single one of those cars puts on a fantastic show. Any generation of Cup Series car, it's put on a fantastic show. It's just this car just can't. I would agree that this race was better than pretty much every race that we've had for next gen at Martinsville, but that doesn't really say much because I'm agreeing with you, Cory, because Martinsville used to be my favorite racetrack on the schedule to go to, and I was one of those people where there's only 3 tracks on the schedule that deserve 2 dates every single year, and that's Daytona, Talladega, and Martinsville. And for the first time ever at this point, I'm beginning to loosen up on that. I still think Daytona and Talladega need 2 dates every year because it's a different form of racing that you can't really get anywhere else. Atlanta is kind of like it, I guess, to a certain degree nowadays, but Daytona and Talladega are very different racetracks, and I felt the same way about Martinsville. But at this point, if Martinsville loses a date next year, I'm not going to cry about it. Like I'll be a little upset, I guess, but I'm not going to cry about it because the racing needs to be better. And it's not, like you said, Cory, it's not Martinsville's fault. Like, none of this is Martinsville's fault. Martinsville is a fantastic, fantastic racetrack. It's just this generation of car does not gel with Martinsville, a track that lives and breathes on the bump and run, a move that you can't even pull off at this racetrack. And it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. I see a mixture on social media. Like, some people really liked the race, whether they were Chase fans or not, but I do see a good portion of people just kind of over it. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about what I just talked about, how maybe Martinsville should lose a date. And I'm not sitting here saying it should lose a date, but if it does, it is what it is at this point, unfortunately. But let us know your thoughts in the What's up, Cory?
Something that was surprising too is if you looked at Jeff Gluck's poll, Chase Elliott won the race. The fan favorite driver won the race, and it was still a 50-50 if it was a good race. And I'm like, that has to be one of the lowest. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that has to be one of the lowest Gluck polls for a Chase Elliott win that I've ever seen.
I couldn't agree more with that, Cory. I forgot to even mention that. It's a valid point. Anybody that pays attention to the Jeff Gluck was it a good race poll on X, it was, I don't know if it was exactly 50-50. Last time I checked, I think it was like 48-52, but it was roughly around 50-50, so we'll just say it was 50-50. I feel like if Elliott didn't win that race, it would have been 30-70. 70 saying it was a bad race, 30% saying it was a good race. If Elliott didn't win, because I did see more people on social media upset with the racing, but that's all. Part of that is also on Fox's shoulders, because like Tyler said, there was passing. It just wasn't at the front. It wasn't a lot of passing. We could use more passing, but there definitely was passing, just not in that top 5, top 6 area. We didn't see a lot of passing. Most of the passing was between 10th and 30th. Unless you were an RCR car, then you were just hanging out at the back. And I'm not going to talk about Kyle Busch today because fuck, that sucks. But
so Martinsville was a 49.2% yes. Ranks number 23 of 23 Chase Elliott wins.
Wow. Look at the stats. Cory got the stats. Cory's the stat man. It's a stat man. I can't believe he came out with that stat right there. But you heard it here.
Gluck did.
Gluck. But you read it. You found the stat, though.
Yeah. Hey, I found it.
You get credit. You get credit for finding the stat that was already found. You get some credit for that, for sure. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the Cookout 400 at Martinsville? All right, let's move on to what I think was the biggest incident we saw in the race, and that was, of course, Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar, a driver known to be very aggressive and ruffle feathers. And Bubba Wallace is personally one of my personal favorite drivers, but I am well aware that Bubba Wallace, when he sees red, he sees red. Like he gets mad as hell in that helmet sometimes and just does not think. And I think that's what we had here. I did hear Bubba Wallace's interview, and I don't know if either y'all noticed, but I did notice it throughout the day, and I was curious if anything was ever going to come of it. and something did end up coming of it, but I was surprised on what it was. But on the first lap of the race, I saw him do it. Carson Hocevar was, if he was on the inside on a restart, and I think he was on the inside almost every time because you get lane choice, but even on the first lap of the race, every single time that Carson Hocevar restarted on the bottom, he at least poked his nose to make it 3 wide every single time, and it worked out well for him, I'd say, all race long, and it just ruffled the wrong feathers as it ruffled Bubba Wallace's feathers. Bubba was not happy with Hocevar sending it into turn 1 like he did 3 wide, and in my opinion, I saw the onboard camera. I'm still not 100% sure that Bubba Wallace was trying to wreck him, per se. I'm like 80 or 90% sure he was trying to wreck him, but I'm 120% sure that he was at least trying to send a message and really fuck with them. I'm so positive on that for sure. But Bubba Wallace ended up sending it into turns 3 and 4, hitting Hocevar in the bumper 3, 4, maybe 5 times, ended up spinning Hocevar, ended up wrecking himself, totaling his race car. And I picked him this week. It's the first DNF in weekly picks, and I put $10 on him. I lost $10, but Bubba Wallace wrecked himself and honestly shot himself in the foot and had to finish behind the wall. After wrecking Hocevar, he couldn't move his car anymore. He totaled his race car. I even saw Freddie Kraft, and I was surprised that Freddie Kraft didn't defend Bubba Wallace on DBC door bumper clear. He was very honest that stuff like that just can't happen. It just can't happen. Because Bubba Wallace, there was definitely intent there to get into him. Like I said, I don't know if he intentionally wrecked him per se, but he should have known that possibly could happen. But when you're just seeing red, you're just seeing red, and that's all Bubba Wallace saw in that moment. So I got to call a spade a spade. Bubba Wallace, that was one of the most idiotic things I've ever seen Bubba Wallace do, or really any driver do, because he just destroyed his own race car, and he potentially had a top 10 car and ended up finishing 36th and dropped from 3rd in points to I think 11th in points because of this. So just a really idiotic move, I would say, by Bubba. I want to get the Pacecar boys' thoughts on this. I guess I'll start with Cory on this one. Cory, how did we feel about the incident between Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar?
I think Freddie Kraft described it perfectly. He said Carson did nothing wrong. Like, honestly, with this car, if I start on the bottom lane, I'm taking it 3 wide every time. Every time. Like, that's the only way you're going to pass right now. So, Carson did nothing wrong. And then Bubba, it sucks because I feel like Bubba's always under a microscope the most, but he clearly made a mistake. Like, whether it was anger, whether it was he was trying to wreck him, whether it was just an accident, it still was the worst accident of the weekend, and it looked bad.
Actually, no,
like even on the broadcast was like, wow, like he flat out wrecked him. Like that's what it looked like, So I know Bubba. We've talked about his maturity a lot, and like he's grown so much over the past few years. I just feel like he finally had a lapse in judgment or made just a bad mistake, and it took him from 3rd in the points to a 5-way tie for 8th or a 4-way tie for 8th. So it sucks, and hopefully he doesn't do it again because it looked bad.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a lapse in judgment. He just saw red in the moment. I personally feel like if that was literally any other driver in the field, we probably wouldn't have had that happen. If it was any other driver other than Carson Hocevar that made that move, because a lot of people don't like Carson at this point. Carson pulls a lot of aggressive moves, and like I said earlier, Hocevar was doing that he did it on the start of the race. On every single restart, he was sending it in there 3 wide, but I do agree with you, Cory, how the way this car races and it's difficult to pass, it's probably a smart move to do that if you're able to do that, make it 3 wide, and the drivers are willing to give you the space. But Bubba probably saw him do it a couple times throughout the race. At some point, he's probably had some sort of incident with Hocevar. He doesn't like the way Hocevar races or the way he handles himself or whatever the case may be. And he just, at that point, was like, I'm done. Somebody needs to do something about this guy. And I think that's probably was his mindset going in there, going into 3 and 4. Is like, I'm going to be the one that finally takes down Carson Hocevar. And he ended up taking down himself. He ended up taking himself out. in that incident. So huge mistake, I'd say, by Bubba Wallace. Hopefully he's able to learn from it for sure. And Hocevar ended up still getting like a top 20. I think he got 16th. He still ended up getting a top 20 finish, which his car was destroyed. I'm amazed that he was able to pull that off. But Tyler, how are we feeling about this incident with Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar on lap 323?
I mean, you can blame the media. They have been hyping somebody up, everybody up, to do something about this guy
This is
since
true.
the season started. I mean, well, since last year. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
Somebody's been saying, no, somebody's got to do something. He's still going to do what he wants until somebody do something. But guess what? He's still going to do what he wants. It's not going to change a goddamn thing. Carson's going to go out there. He's still going to send it 3 wide, and he's still going to do what he feels like he has to do. They can continue to wreck him all they want, but it doesn't make a difference in his life. Zero. None. And Bubba, Bubba was drooling for that chance because Bubba is a hothead anyway, and he's always blamed for everybody he wrecks and all of the bullshit. Doesn't matter if he's right or wrong, he gets blamed for it. That was somebody he could put his ass on the wall and everybody was going to sit back and go, well, we seen it coming. So I don't know. It was definitely one of those we seen it coming moments. The media has been hyping him up to do it, and Carson probably deserved it a little bit. But at the same time, Carson's smart as hell, and he's gonna do the only thing he can do to pass with these damn cars, and that's send it 3 wide and dare somebody to do something about it. Unfortunately, somebody did something about it. Did it ruin his day? Not completely. He's still, 16th and did something to salvage his time, and poor Bubba parked it. So I don't know. Bubba lost that one for sure.
Yeah, because I can't imagine how the reaction would have been if Bubba was able to wreck Hocevar cleanly and end his race and not get any damage to himself. I think a lot of fans probably would have been upset because fans don't already like Bubba, and a lot of fans like Hocevar, but the garage reaction, he probably would have gotten out of the car. It would have been a Dale Earnhardt 1998 Daytona 500 situation. Everybody would have been like, yeah, give him high fives and stuff. That's probably what it would have been if he successfully hit it, for sure. Even though Hocevar, like y'all said, Hocevar didn't really do anything. It was aggressive. But he didn't do anything wrong. It's not like he sent it in there and doored the shit out of Bubba. I think he made very slight contact in 1 and 2, but you're 3 wide at Martinsville. I think that's just going to happen. You're 3 wide at Martinsville. Like, you're going to make at least a little bit of contact. I don't think it was anything extreme. I don't even know if he actually touched him. It was very close to really touching him. But Hocevar didn't really do anything wrong. But I think Bubba's mind in that moment, somebody needs to do something about this guy. He's going to cause an accident. I'm tired of this guy. And just saw red in the moment and just... He wrecked Hocevar, but he totaled his own race car, getting a DNF after such an amazing start to the year. Bubba Wallace is now, like you said, I think it's a 4-way tie for 8th. I think that's what it is, Cory. I forget if that's exact. I think that's what it is, though. It was just crazy that we have a big tie like that in points right now. But it was dumb, and this comes from a Bubba Wallace fan. It was completely idiotic what he did. It was completely idiotic. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the incident with Bubba Wallace and Carson Hocevar? All right, let's get down to pretty much the last stage of this race. Denny Hamlin was, in my opinion, completely dominant of this race. He was by far the best race car in the field all race long, and Denny Hamlin was looking for another grandfather clock. He kicked ass. He was phenomenal all day long. But because we had that long green flag run in the final stage, Chase Elliott sounded like on the radio he wasn't too happy with his race car, and Alan Gustafson made the crew chief decision to bring him down pit road a little early. He ended up coming down pit road, I think 20 laps before Denny did, or maybe it was a couple more laps than that, but he came out a good distance before Denny did, and it ended up working out because it gave him track position and put him in the lead. Eventually he lost the lead to Denny, but then we ended up getting the caution for the brake rotor on pit road. I think that was a very questionable caution, by the way. The brake rotor on pit road, I think that was very questionable. I don't think I have seen people with the tinfoil hats on. I don't think they threw the caution out there for Chase Elliott to win. But I think they were like, this is technically debris. Let's just throw the caution here, because that brake rotor was there for a number of laps at that point. It had been sitting there for a number of laps because I think it came off of Ty Dillon's car. So we ended up getting that caution there. Hamlin didn't have a good restart near the end of the race, and Elliott drove away and got his first win of the season, not just for himself, but for Chevrolet and for Hendrick Motorsport. So great moment for Elliott. Elliott, in his post-race interview, I felt like was showing more of his personality than he usually would. Still pretty bland, in my opinion. Still pretty bland, but you can tell that he was actually a little excited. He kept on saying, "This is the earliest we've won in the season." He said that like 3 or 4 times. "This is the earliest we've ever won." So he seemed at least a little hyped about that. So that was pretty cool. But Chase Elliott, the Chase Sexuals were hyped. And I'm going to send it to one of those Chase Sexuals right now. Tyler, how are we feeling after that Chase Elliott win? Alan Gustafson making the call, and then Dennis the Menace, Denny Hamlin just having a completely dominant day, but coming home P2.
It was crazy watching Denny dominate that race and come home P2. I honestly didn't think that Allen was going to find a way to make it happen. I mean, I got scared there when they were talking about Chase being completely off and everything being out of sync with everybody else. But I mean, Allen pulled it off. He pulled the right moves and did exactly what he needed to do. Chase did exactly what he needed to do, kept those tires good enough to stay, able to stay in front of Denny. He didn't let the fall off happen, and he was able to, at the end there, stay passing a couple of lap cars. Got a little lucky with the lap cars he was passing. I think at one point Connor was racing Denny as hard as he possibly could there at the end, for just to not even let Denny pass him. Chevy to Chevy, or for a Chevy at that point. So, I mean, that was awesome to see. But yeah, Chase getting his first win this early in the season, I think, is huge for his confidence. I mean, Chase is supposed to be one of the best drivers, if not the best driver at Hendrick Motorsports. So the fact that he's been struggling as bad as he has the last couple years has been not the greatest, and we've all kind of worried about it. His passion for NASCAR doesn't seem to be the greatest all the time. So watching him actually be excited up there, it seems. I think he'll always be a little bit vanilla. I just think that's who he is.
I agree.
But he was actually excited up there, and that's something we need. We need him, the most popular driver in NASCAR, to be excited and have hope for, the next race. And that's what he gave us. He gave us a little bit of hope for the next race, and the NASCAR fan base is happy to see it, for sure.
Yeah, at the end of that race, I overall didn't mind. Even though I'm not the biggest Elliott fan, I think I've made that clear. I don't hate Elliott. I feel like he can do more for the sport. I feel like he's pretty bland, this and that. But overall, I think it's great for the sport to have him win, especially after these last couple of weeks. Like, we've had Reddick win a bunch of races with Michael Jordan, which brings in casual eyes. But then we have the normal NASCAR fans, the everyday NASCAR fans, having the most popular driver in the sport win. So I would say it's another great moment for the sport to have Chase Elliott win the race and have Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports get their first win of the year. They really went all out for the post-race, too. You can tell that NASCAR and Fox really wanted to make a very big deal about Hendrick Motorsports winning this race, because you had Jeff Gordon get an interview, Alan Gustafson got an interview, so they really wanted to make a big deal out of it. And I would say, I don't think it was as big of a deal as they were making it, but it still was a fairly big deal because Hendrick hasn't gotten off to the strongest start of the season. And Alan Gustafson made a fantastic call, and Chase Elliott, he's the most popular guy. He's the most popular guy. But Cory, how did we feel about the end of this race? Alan Gustafson making the gutsy, great call to give Elliott the track position. How do we feel about Denny getting P2 after having a dominant day? And Chase Elliott, most popular driver, goes to victory lane for the first time in 2026.
I mean, NASCAR needed it to end that way with how boring the race was before that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, makes sense.
It sucks for Denny and Denny's fans too, because he deserved that win. But it was also cool to see the fan favorite driver, finally have a strategy call go right. Because Alan Gustafson gets grilled all the time. You can't be Chase Elliott's crew chief and not get destroyed. But yeah, dude, that I think the only part that makes me bitter about the weekend is that caution. Like, They said brake rotor on pit road, and they didn't call it until all the pit stops were done. And I don't know. To me, that caution was BS. That was almost like a debris caution from back in the day. But that makes me a little bitter about the weekend and feel bad for Denny and feel like it was done on purpose. But, it's all tinfoil hat club shit. So, yeah, but I mean, it's good for Hendrick Motorsports. It's good for Chase Elliott. It's good for NASCAR because that race would have been abysmal if Denny would have won. I guarantee it would have been like a 30, like you said. So, I mean, they made something out of nothing, really, as for an entertainment perspective.
Yeah, I would agree. It really made something out of nothing for sure. And I agree with the caution call. Is it technically a caution? Yeah, but if it's a caution on one lap, it's a caution on the next lap, And that brake rotor was sitting there for quite a while. It had to have been sitting there for at least 10 or 15 laps. And for them to wait that long to throw the caution, because I know they saw it. They, like you said, I think they just wanted all the pit stops to get through, and then they decided to throw it. So, and I also don't think that they threw it for Chase Elliott to win, because if that were the case, they would have probably thrown it quicker. They probably would have thrown it quicker while Chase Elliott was still in the lead, I would say. So, I don't know. I don't really agree with the caution. And then I quickly do want to talk a little bit more about Alan Gustafson, at least myself, because the Chase Elliott fans hate him. They think he's an idiot or something like that. I don't get it. Alan Gustafson's been around a long time. He was my favorite driver. His first crew chief, Kyle Busch, when he was in the 5 car. He's been at Hendrick Motorsports for over 20 years as a crew chief at this point. He's one of the smartest guys in the garage. He deserves his flowers. He deserves his credit. And I go on social media and everybody's like, oh, finally, Alan Gustafson, he did something right. That idiot. He finally did something. And I see other people go like, well, Chase Elliott wanted to come down pit road anyway, so Alan Gustafson didn't really do anything. And it's like, Alan Gustafson needs some credit. He really does. Because even though Elliott was not too happy with his race car in that moment, guess who's the crew chief? Alan Gustafson. He's still the one that has to make the decisions, and he knows if he brings Elliott in at that point and we end up going green the rest of the way, that Chase Elliott's going to really struggle at the end of the run. He might not even make it on tires the rest of the race. That was a legitimate conversation that he might not be able to make it on tires, and then he ended up getting the caution. So Alan Gustafson, in my opinion, made a gutsy call, and it worked out. So congratulations to Alan Gustafson. Congratulations to Chase Elliott, Hendrick Motorsports, and Chevrolet, all getting their first wins of the season. And I expect more, because Elliott has been the standout driver, I would say, at Hendrick so far this year. I would have him, Byron, and Larson kind of as 1A, 1B, 1C. They're all very talented drivers in their own different ways. And Elliott just put on a great race, and he finished off the race and held the wheel and got through traffic at the end of that thing and got himself a victory. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did we feel about Denny Hamlin completely dominating the day, finishing second place? And how do we feel about Alan Gustafson and Chase Elliott getting their first wins of the season? Okay, now that we are done with all the Martinsville stuff, we do have a couple of news stories to go through, and then we'll preview Rockingham a little bit. The first one we got to go through here is something that was discussed all week, and that was the Hall of Fame. And we'll get more into the nit and gritty of what's really been discussed on social media here in a second on who should be in, who shouldn't be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. But I first wanted to give the flowers to some of our nominees, because we did have the nominees released. It's crazy timing on this, that we had the nominees released this past weekend. But the Modern Era ballot, 2 people get voted in for the Modern Era ballot, and you have Kevin Harvick, Neil Bonnet, you have Jeff Burton, you have Ray Elder, you have the Biff, Greg Biffle, you have Randy LaJoy, Tim Brewer, Ernie Elliott, Randy Dorton, and Jack Sprague, all on the Modern Era ballot. And then the Pioneer ballot, only one of these people get voted in. We have Banjo Matthews, Larry Phillips, the legendary crew chief of Harry Hyde, Herb Nab, and then the legendary Ray Fox. All these guys have been nominated to potentially go into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in the class of 2027. And I want to get the boys' thoughts on this. I guess I'll start with you, Tyler. Is there really anybody that really stands out to you? Maybe there's an omission from the ballot that you wish was there? What do you think about this nominee list that we have? And also, Harvick had a great moment pre-race as well. He didn't know he was going to get nominated. I don't know why he wouldn't think he'd get nominated in his first year of eligibility. He's a fantastic driver. But Tyler, how do we feel about these nominees here? And anybody really stand out to you?
Let's see here. Give me 1 second. I just want to double check this list because I know Kevin's on that, but I believe Jeff is on this list, isn't he?
Jeff Burton, yes.
Burton? Yes. So yeah, Jeff Burton would be the standout in my opinion. So yeah, I mean Harvick's pretty much a lock. We know he's going. At this point, since Greg passed away and everything that he's done for NASCAR and humanitarian wise and all that, he's pretty much a lock as well. But I don't think anybody's really thought about Jeff Burton, and Jeff Burton really is probably the most deserving man on that list, in my opinion, at this point for the Hall of Fame. He has been around a hell of a long time. He has not left and he has not wavered. He has made sure he's stayed part of this sport and made sure his opinion's been heard. It may not have been as strong as everybody wanted it to be, and it's probably not the exact opinion everybody wanted it to be all the time, but the man has always been here for this sport and has not wavered. So if there's anybody on that list at this point in my opinion, it would be Jeff Burton.
I guess I would kind of agree with that personally, just because I don't think there's anybody that's on that modern era ballot that's more deserving other than maybe Kevin Harvick or Greg Biffle to go into the Hall of Fame. So I would agree with that point. I do have a knock on Jeff Burton, though, as well. And this comes from someone who is a big fan of Jeff Burton. I'm also from Virginia, so I've always been a big My dad was a huge fan of Jeff Burton, so I've always been a big supporter of Jeff Burton. But he had a very similar end to his career as a DW or as a Jimmy Johnson, where he wasn't that great at the end of his career. He wasn't very competitive at the end of his career. He never won a championship in the Cup Series. I think he is a Hall of Famer, though, for sure. But I think that is the one knock I would have on him. But like I said, I think out of all those drivers, I would say he's probably the third most deserving on that modern era ballot list. But in my opinion, there's a big omission from the ballot, and that is Sam Ard. Sam Ard is one of the greatest drivers in Busch Series, Grand National Series, Nationwide, Xfinity, O'Reilly, whatever you want to call the series. He's one of the greatest to ever do it, and he's still not on the ballot. And we have Randy LaJoie on the ballot, and Randy LaJoie is not nearly as good of a Busch Series driver as Sam Ard was. I really question that from NASCAR. I don't know how Sam Ard isn't on the ballot, and it really grinds my gears that he's not on the ballot. I only know so much about Sam Ard because I remember when Kyle Busch was kicking ass in the Busch Series and in the Nationwide Series. Every other week, he just broke another one of Sam Ard's records. Also, Sam Ard had all these records, and yet he's not even a nominee. I don't really understand that personally. But Cory, how are we feeling about this nominees list for the modern era ballot, the pioneer ballot? Is there really anybody that's standing out to you on this list?
I think Tyler named the three that I'd vote in. If I could have 3 votes, I'd vote 3 all from the modern era, and it'd be the 3 he mentioned: Kevin Harvick, Greg Biffle, and Jeff Burton. Just because their records alone, but especially Jeff Burton didn't win Greg Biffle, because he's won in every series, has, I think, 19 victories in the Cup Series. Jeff Burton has 21 Cup Series wins. Kevin Harvick's a champion. And then if I was to vote for anybody in the Pioneer ballot, and more based off statistics, not that I know too much about him, but Herb Nabb being a 2-time Cup Series winning crew chief and 3rd all-time with crew chief wins at 92 is impressive, and I feel like that should get you in.
Yeah, we'll have to see who ends up getting in. I think the modern era ballot's probably a lock because Kevin Harvick is clearly a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think I think if Biff hadn't passed away over this last year, I think there potentially could be a debate for that second spot with Biff, with Burton, with some of these older guys like Brewer and some of these older guys. I think there could have been a debate, but because of Biff passing away over this last year. It will be a fantastic moment for the sport, and it'd be very cool to have Greg Biffle's remaining family and Cletus probably there, and anybody that's really close to him, being able to live in that moment of him getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he also was at the Hall of Fame for Ram Race for the Seat. That was, I think, one of the last times that was the last time I saw him on camera, just because it wasn't the last thing he recorded, for sure, because he recorded for Cletus a bunch, but it was the last thing I saw him on camera was for the Ram Race for the Seat. So I think that would be very fitting for him to go to the Hall of Fame. So I think it's a given. I think Harvick and Biffle will go to the Hall of Fame. I would say for the Pioneer ballot, I would say it's probably Harry Hyde. I know Junior really talks a lot about Banjo. I don't know a lot about Banjo, but Banjo, great engineer and has a great history in the sport as well. So maybe Banjo Matthews. It really just depends on who's in the room. Who's in the room? Who are the people that are voting on this? I think that's a big thing on it, because maybe we won't see Biff get into the Hall of Fame first year. I think he will, but maybe not, just because the people that are in the room. But we'll have to see who ends up getting into the Hall of Fame for the 2027 class. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe even give your predictions on who do you think is going to be the modern era vote. By the way, you get 2 people that get in through the modern era, and you get 1 coming through the Pioneer ballot. So let us know your thoughts on all of that in the comments. But let's get to the actual conversation that's been had all week and who should and who shouldn't be allowed in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I think there's been, and it all really started with Travis on the Dale Jr. Download saying that he doesn't think Justin Allgaier is a Hall of Famer. And I think there is a debate there. I personally would put him as a Hall of Famer, but I definitely think there is a debate. If Allgaier continues this season and ends up winning another championship, at that point there is zero debate. He's probably even a first ballot Hall of Famer at that point. There would be no debate at that point if he continues on this run that he currently is this season. But I will agree that there is a debate to be made with Justin Allgaier. But then Travis took it one step further in saying that he doesn't think that stuff outside of the Cup Series should really count to get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And I am 100% dead set against that, because the Truck Series, the Busch Series, or the O'Reilly, whatever you want to call it, that really built out the sport to be bigger and better than it ever was. And drivers like Ron Hornaday really kind of made that happen. And then the lower divisions, I think Denny made a good point on social media that lower divisions, like below the Truck Series, don't really have as much of an impact as they used to back in the day. And I would agree with that. Maybe drivers that are racing in the NASCAR Weekly Series, like throughout the country, like your Bowman Gray people and all of that stuff, maybe they shouldn't get in the Hall of Fame. Not sure. I guess when that moment comes, we'll have to talk about it. But these local short track guys from like the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, they got to be Hall of Famers, because they're the ones that really, the sport was really built on their back. Like, they were the ones that really, the sport was built on their back. NASCAR wouldn't be nearly as big without a lot of those guys from back in the day, like your Ray Hendricks, like drivers like that. Like, NASCAR wouldn't be what it is without these guys. So I'm under the opinion that it's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, not the Cup Series Hall of Fame. I think that's been something that's been said a lot, that some people consider it a Cup Series Hall of Fame. Some people consider it a NASCAR Hall of Fame. And I want to get the boys' thoughts on this. I'll start with Cory on this, because I'm not exactly sure where Cory stands on this. I kind of know some of his opinions, but I don't know exactly where he stands on this. I'm quite curious. Cory, how do you feel about this NASCAR Hall of Fame debate? Take the Allgaier stuff out of it, but just the Hall of Fame, who should get in, who shouldn't get in?
I think it's a mindset. It's 2 different eras. I think honestly we just got to think about it in that way. I think that if you were to look at the Truck Series, the Nationwide, sorry, I almost said Nationwide, the Truck Series, the O'Reilly Series, and the Cup Series right now, there's nobody in the Truck Series that's even worth mentioning for Hall of Fame. And then Allgaier's the only one you can even mention worthy of being a Hall of Fame nominee, maybe in the O'Reilly Series, and then in the Cup Series you have a handful, right? So if you look at it within the last 5 years, I understand what he meant. I understand what Travis meant by you could, if you just look at the Cup Series, you have Hall of Famers, and then when you look at the O'Reilly Series, you got maybe one if you want to consider it. So I can see where he's coming from, but like you said, like NASCAR's history was built off of O'Reilly drivers in the past. It's built off of Truck Series drivers in the past. You have Kyle Busch. Like, if you just went off his championship and his Cup Series stats, do you feel the exact same way if it was just his Cup stats? But no, he won so many times in these other series. So if you want to consider those stats for Kyle Busch's Hall of Fame nomination, you have to think about those people in the series below that are getting wins, that are getting championships, that are contributing to the sport as a whole. So I agree. I understand Travis's point of view if you were to think about the last 5 years of the sport, but you can't just forget about the last 100 years of the sport. You know what I mean? It's like that. That's why I understand both point of views. I'm not. I yeah, O'Reilly and Truck and Lower should get in, but they have to, like what Denny said, they have to have a damn
Outstanding
good
record.
rap sheet to get in. Like you're getting in with names like Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. Like you got to think about all those names when you're voting them in. But at the same time, like what they did for the sport, not just on the racetrack, needs to be mentioned as well. Like you're talking about Jeff Burton, who's still out there helping the sport and being a name and being a person that gets interviewed, helping the sport get views and helping people understand the sport. All that needs to be thought about when you're voting for someone in the Hall of Fame. It's different from other sports.
Yeah, I would agree for sure because it's a lot different from other sports. Because in other sports, for example, like the NFL, the people that are going to get into the Hall of Fame are going to be players and coaches. And that's really it. It's players and coaches. In NASCAR, you're going to have engineers and stuff like that get into Hall of Fame. You're going to have people that never necessarily made it to the big leagues. I guess you could say the Cup Series make it to the Hall of Fame, whether that's O'Reilly or the trucks or even just the local divisions, like local short track racing. You're going to have drivers make it to the Hall of Fame, and you have to take into account what they did after, what the impact they made on the sport, the legacy that they have when it comes to the sport. What did they do after they finished racing? And that's why I think Jeff Burton would be a big contender for the Hall of Fame, because not even necessarily, he was a great driver. I'm not saying he was a bad driver, but Jeff Burton's done more for the sport after, similar to Dale Jr. He's done more for the sport after he retired than when he was racing, because he's been kind of the leader of the driver alliance, or whatever you want to call it. He kind of leads all that stuff. He has for a number of years. So he's done a lot for the sport, not just on TV. He's done so much to be a mentor to a lot of these drivers and just an heir to the sport, I guess you could say. So Jeff Burton would be a good example for that. And I don't know. I don't know. This debate, I feel like, got a little bit out of hand on Twitter. Feelings were hurt. My feelings were hurt. I'm not going to fake. My feelings were hurt a little bit on it. It got really deep, I would say. But Tyler, what were your thoughts on this Hall of Fame conversation on who should get in, who shouldn't get in?
I don't think people should take the last 5 years in consideration. I understand why people are, but the last 5 years is a little blip in reality. So like all of these Hall of Fame people are going into the Hall of Fame after 20, 25 years, and I know in the last 5 years things have changed a lot, but I don't think that changes who's going to make it into the Hall of Fame. You always will have to do something great. You will always have to do something to change the sport, be a name, whatever it is to make the Hall of Fame. It doesn't matter where you come from in this sport to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I feel like in those lower divisions like O'Reilly and in the trucks, you need to have an outstanding record, and you can't be around for like a year or two either. You gotta be around. You gotta have a legacy. You gotta be the guy, and that's why I'm big on Justin Allgaier getting to the Hall of Fame, because he's been the guy. Like every single year for the last 10 years, he's been the favorite to win the championship. Every single year. He only has one, but every single year he's always the biggest threat for that. He's always winning a bunch of races. He's been the guy to beat in that series. Matt Crafton, even though he had a difficult last couple of years of his career, throughout most of his career, he was one of those guys as well. I don't know if I definitely wouldn't have either of them as a first ballot Hall of Famer, but both of them I would say are Hall of Famers in their own right, I would say. I know people have differing opinions on that, but I am using Crafton and Allgaier as an example. I would say, in my opinion, I'd say they're Hall of Famers, but you can use whatever example you want, like Jack Sprague. Like Jack Sprague, he's a nominee. You got Randy LaJoie, he's a nominee right now. They could both go into the Hall of Fame. I don't think they should on this ballot at some point. Maybe they both get in. Sam Ard needs to get in, though. That's who really needs to get in. Like, geez. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this whole entire Hall of Fame conversation? Who deserves to get into the Hall of Fame? Who shouldn't? Where should the boundaries, the fence kind of be for who gets into the Hall of Fame and who doesn't? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. All right. Now that we're done with all the Hall of Fame stuff, we do have another story to talk about here. And it's a story we've kind of already talked about a little bit, so we're not going to get into the nit and gritty of it because we did already do that on a previous episode. But just to give you the quick update on this, and we'll talk about it. Daniel Dye, of course, said some things that he probably really, really regrets at this point on a live stream where he was just opening card packs, did something really idiotic and stupid, and ended up getting himself where he has to go through a program to get back into the sport. And he has completed his program, and now he's been reinstated back into the sport after being suspended not just from NASCAR but from Kaulig racing. And right after getting reinstated, the announcement came down that he has resigned. And I don't think he resigned from Kaulig racing. I think that's just wording. They were probably like, all right, we're going to have to let you go. We're going to have to fire you. But how do you want us to word this? Because they're trying to be nice to Daniel. Because Daniel Dye got fired. I don't think that was necessarily Kaulig Racing's decision. I think it was probably more of a sponsorship Ram sort of decision. Like, Ram's just getting back in the sport. I don't think they really want to be associated with what Daniel Dye had done on that live stream. I just don't think they want anything to do with that. So I'd probably lean. I don't know this for sure. This is just me speculating as a fan. I think Ram's probably the one that pulled the trigger, because I also heard Chris Rice on Sirius XM saying that it's bigger than us. Like, we're not the ones. We're pretty much saying we're not the ones making the decision on this. And Daniel Dye is no longer racing for Kaulig Racing. He will be replaced by Cory LaJoie. Cory LaJoie will be racing full time the rest of the year in the number 10 car. He has a full-time ride. He has a full-time ride in trucks. Wow. Cory LaJoie is full-time ride in trucks. After all that shit he talked, he's a full-time racer in the trucks. That's hilarious to me. And then Ty Dillon will actually be driving the number 25 truck this weekend at Rockingham. And I want to get the boys' thoughts on this. Like I said, we've kind of already talked about it, but I guess I'll start with you, Tyler, on this. I personally think that what Daniel Dye did was stupid, but at this point, this probably is a career ender. Like, I don't know. I don't think we're ever going to see Daniel Dye in a competitive car or truck ever again. And Daniel Dye isn't the greatest racer, but he keeps the cars clean, and he's an okay racer. I just don't think it's fair for him to pretty much have his career ended by this. Like I said, what he did was completely stupid, and I don't agree with it. But a career ender, I don't know if I agree with that. Tyler, what are your thoughts on all this?
Career ender definitely was unnecessary. I mean, it wasn't that bad of an incident, but it's the world we live in. He should have known better. He's seen it happen to multiple drivers.
Yeah, and those other drivers that we had it happen to, like we had Denny Hamlin post that Family Guy meme. We had Gregson like the George Floyd meme. So, but those drivers had proven themselves to be very talented. Like, Gregson just came off of dominating in the Xfinity Series. Denny Hamlin had won so many races at that point, came so close to winning a championship so many times, when Daniel Dye hasn't won anything. So it wasn't worth them really keeping him around. It wasn't worth pushing through the headache. And yeah, Daniel Dye, I don't know if we'll ever see him race again. I don't know if we'll ever see him race in NASCAR again. And if he does, it's going to be for a really, really bad race team. Daniel Dye, like you said, Tyler, he should have known better. He kind of brought it on himself with the way the world is right now. He should have known better for sure. But to have it be a career ender, I think is extremely unfortunate. But Cory, how are we feeling about this whole Daniel Dye update? Daniel Dye has been released from his Kaulig racing contract.
Man, it sucks for Daniel. Like, I don't think he's ever really been in top tier equipment. I mean, I think he's had shots and like some pretty decent equipment.
B
and
class.
Then going to Ram with help build a team there, you know, and in a world where Corey Heim can dominate, win a championship, and still not get a full-time ride, you have no leeway being in the Truck Series making mistakes like this. Like, I hope it's not a career ender, but I would bet money that it probably is. Like he'll come and get some crappy rides here and there, but yeah, like in a world where Corey Heim can't get a full-time ride, a driver that hasn't won anything makes a mistake like this after being in the series or in NASCAR for a couple of years, like, they're gonna let go of you quick.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. I think Daniel Dye is a good guy. I've seen his interviews. I've seen him talk. I don't know him personally, but he seems like a good guy. It just was really stupid. He was trying to be funny. He was trying to maybe even garner a little attention at the same time, trying to poke at David Malukas. I think it was idiotic, completely stupid, and I don't agree with it. But yeah, his career, at least his competitive career, is probably over. He had an opportunity with Kaulig in the O'Reilly Series, but that's after Kaulig wasn't quite as good anymore, and that was probably his best opportunity. And this could have potentially been a great opportunity with Ram getting back into the sport, with Dodge as a whole getting back into the sport, and he had the door open because his dad owns multiple Dodge dealerships. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think he resigned, because why would he leave? It wouldn't make any sense. I think he definitely got let go, and it got worded like that to help Daniel out, to potentially go to his next job and be like, no, I decided to leave the race team. They didn't fire me. I decided to leave. That way it could potentially help with his future opportunities at other race teams. But he's never going to be in top tier equipment. He's never going to be in B tier equipment or even C tier equipment. Like, we're not going to see him in a good race car probably ever again. He's going to be in a really bad race cars if he's going to race at all in the rest of his career. Maybe he can get a decent ARCA ride or something like that, or maybe Cars Tour. I don't know if he's really a short track racer per se, but in the premier top 3 divisions from this point forward, I think Daniel Dye's even semi-competitive career is over, and that just, like I said, like you said, Tyler, he kind of brought it on himself. I would agree with that, and it's just unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Daniel Dye resigning? I'll put that in quotation marks. Resigning from Kaulig Racing, and what do you think Daniel Dye's future is in NASCAR, if any? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. All right, now that we're done with all of that, let's get into the Rockingham schedule and the Rockingham facts. Let's take a look at the schedule. On Friday, April 3rd at 11 a.m., we have the Craftsman Truck Series practice on Fox Sports 2. If you're watching on YouTube, I did find out earlier today that it's actually on Fox Sports 2, not on Fox Sports 1. So that is my mistake on that. There's actually a couple of mistakes on this schedule, and I'll get to the other one here in a second. But at 11 a.m., we have Craftsman Truck Series practice on Fox Sports 2, immediately followed by Craftsman Truck Series qualifying. And then at 1:30 p.m., we have O'Reilly Series practice, immediately followed by O'Reilly Series qualifying on the CW app. And then if you're looking at the graphic, it says 7:30 p.m. for the Craftsman Truck Series race. I don't know. I don't think I made this mistake, actually, because usually I don't think I remember seeing 7:30. I might have. I might have. But Rockingham doesn't have the greatest website. I saw yesterday. It's almost like a GoDaddy sort of setup. It's a pretty bad website, to be honest. So I honestly think that I just read it as that. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, I didn't even know Rockingham had lights. But the race is not actually at 7:30. The Black Tire and Auto Service 200 for the Craftsman Truck Series is actually at 4:30 on Fox Sports 1. And then we move over to Saturday, 11:30 a.m. We have the Rockingham ARCA Menards East 125. So that's obviously for the ARCA Menards East Series. ARCA needs to get better with their race names sometimes. And that will be on Flow racing. And then at 2:30 p.m., we have the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. We have the North Carolina Education Lottery 250 on the CW. And now we'll move over to the weekend facts. Of course, no Cup Series race this weekend, but Rockingham is located in Rockingham, North Carolina. It's a little bit under a mile long. It's 0.94 miles long. It is a speedway. It opened up back in 1965. The first Cup Series race was March 13th of 1966, and that race was won by Paul Goldsmith. Of course, not an active win leader. No last year's winner for the Cup Series here. The notable entries that we have this weekend for trucks and O'Reilly. In the Truck Series, we have Cory in the number 1. We have Connor Hall in the number 4 for Nice. We have Adam Andretti making another start for Tricon in the number 5. We have Sammy Smith in the number 7 for Spire Motorsports. And I haven't updated that yet because we had the news with Daniel Dye. But Corey LaJoie will actually be driving the number 10 for Ram Colleague. And the number 25 will be Ty Dillon. The number 45 will be Landon Lewis. I'm excited to see Landon out there. I think he's a very talented young racer. We have Ram Race for the Seat alumni Michael Christopher Jr. driving the number 62 for Stuart Friesen. He drove a couple races for him last year, and he's driving for him this weekend. And then we have Carson Hocevar racing for Spire in the number 77. Carson Hocevar, no days off for him. And then we look over at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and the only really big notable entry I have is a huge one, as we have Cletus McFarland making his first start in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Rockingham Speedway for Richard Childress Racing. And then when it comes to the weekend weather report, a low chance of rain throughout the weekend. Friday, it could be anywhere between 80 and 60 degrees throughout the day, and very similar on Saturday around race time for the O'Reilly Series. I'm expecting it to be low 80s, maybe high 70s around race time, but it doesn't look like we're going to get any rain, and the wind should be anywhere between 5 to 10 miles per hour going north throughout the weekend. And there was a big omission from the entry list earlier today. It came out that Nick Sanchez and AM Racing have backed out, and they're no longer on the entry list. Nick Sanchez, I consider one of the best young drivers in our sport right now, and he's a very talented driver, had a lot of success with Big Machine Racing last year, got let go of his ride because he doesn't have a lot of sponsorship, and then AM Racing probably weren't able to get the sponsorship locked down for this race, or sponsorship backed out, or whatever the case may be. And I just feel so bad for Nick Sanchez, man. Cory, just give me your quick thoughts on Nick Sanchez not being able to participate in this race.
I mean, his trajectory in NASCAR changed so quickly, because I swear when he was in the 48 car last year, he was doing so well. It was impressive to see that 48 up front as much as it was. And then to lose that ride and go to the 25, and he's still showing flashes of being impressive and showing his talent, but to just like have the team back out and not race this week is kind of insane with how quick the trajectory of his career is going right now. And I'm not saying like it's his fault. It's not his fault. But to just openly not compete in a race this week is kind of insane.
Yeah, it is insane with someone as much talent as Nick Sanchez has. I truly just don't understand it. I really don't. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about Nick Sanchez having to back out this weekend for AM Racing. And we're not really going to have any Fords out there, too. We're going to have the number 5 from Hettinger. I think J.J. Ailey's racing the car. That'll be the only Ford in the whole entire field. Penske and Roush really need to come back to the O'Reilly Series, because next year, I don't think there's going to be a single Ford in the field. I really don't. I don't think there's going to be a single Ford race team in that series anymore. But I want to give some quick thoughts on, before we get to our weekly picks for Bristol, because we are going to do our weekly picks a week early because we might not have Tyler available next week. I wanted to go through quickly some of my thoughts on Rockingham Speedway. I'll send it to Cory, let him give his thoughts as well. But Rockingham, I love Rockingham. It has a great history in our sport. For a long time, it was the second race on the schedule right after the Daytona 500. So you would go from the Daytona 500, the glitz and glamour of the Daytona 500 straight into North Carolina, into one of the toughest racetracks on the schedule. I would say there is a debate between Rockingham and Darlington on being the most difficult track. I'd probably give the slight edge to Darlington when we're just talking about the track itself. But when we're talking about the drivers that are going to be dealing with the track this weekend, Rockingham to some of these drivers may appear as a more difficult track because none of them have any experience at this racetrack. We raced at Rockingham during Easter weekend last year, and that was the first time that NASCAR has seen Rockingham in a long time. I know ARCA raced there a couple of years in like the early 2010s or late 2000s for a couple of years. They decided to make a comeback to Rockingham for the ARCA series for a couple of years there, and they just haven't been back since. It hasn't been raced in the Cup Series since I think 2003. They haven't been there in the O'Reilly Series since like 2004, 2005, something like that. It's been a long time. So none of these drivers have any experience at Rockingham. So I think it could create a very entertaining race. And I like how challenging Rockingham is. I would love to see it back on the Cup Series schedule. Some of you may have remembered last year, I kind of made some predictions on what we would have for the Cup Series schedule, and I thought Rockingham would make it onto the schedule as the All-Star race for 2026. They decided to go a different route, make Dover the All-Star race, and make Wilkesboro a points race. I don't really agree with Dover being the All-Star race, but you had to fit in Dover somewhere, I guess. So I think Rockingham was probably the first track left off the schedule. And when they had Rockingham Easter weekend last year for that O'Reilly Series race, it was packed. They packed in the house, I would say. So I think they would pack in the house for their Cup Series race as well. I heard there was actually a decent amount of camping, surprisingly, for that race as well. So I would love to see it back on the Cup Series schedule. I hope it's on the 2027 schedule. I'll predict again that it's going to be on the 2027 schedule, but we'll have to overall see. Cory, I know you don't really have a lot of experience watching Rockingham because when they were racing at Rockingham back in the day, I don't even know if you were watching NASCAR at all at that point or you were too young. And then when you got back into NASCAR, Rockingham wasn't raced at until last year. So I know you don't know much about Rockingham, but quickly, what are just some of your thoughts on Rockingham and going there this weekend for the O'Reilly Series and the Craftsman Truck Series and its potential Cup Series future?
For me, I'm excited. NASCAR is a sport built off its history, right? And Rockingham is one of those tracks that I feel like, even though we haven't got to see them race there a lot, everyone kind of knew the name of the track just based off of how much history NASCAR has there. So them going back there last year was awesome. The race, I don't remember too much, but I remember it was a great race. I think we talked about how we enjoyed it and that we wanted the Cup Series to go there after last year's race. So the fact that it wasn't just a 1 year thing, and I'm hoping that this race this weekend kills it like it did last year, so the Cup Series can be there next year.
I hope so. I hope we see it back on the Cup Series schedule. A lot of the drivers want it. A lot of the drivers want to go to Rockingham in the Cup Series, so I would expect it to be on the schedule next year. They'll just have to move some stuff around, maybe take away a date here or there from a couple of tracks. Like, for example, Martinsville. Martinsville might end up losing a date. Who knows? But there's going to be some stuff can probably moved around on the schedule, and Rockingham could hopefully find itself back on. I don't want a track removed. Like, I don't want Dover to be removed from the schedule for Rockingham, but I would like for them to figure out a way to get Rockingham on the schedule next year. But we'll have to see what happens with all that. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do we feel about Rockingham Speedway and Rockingham Speedway potentially making a return to the Cup Series next year? And are you looking forward to this Easter weekend for the O'Reilly Series and the Craftsman Truck Series at The Rock? All right, let's get into our weekly picks. Usually we would do it the week of the race, but it sounds like Tyler might not be able to be available for next week's edition of Hit the Pacecar, and we have a bye week for the Cup Series this week, so it kind of works out. So we're gonna make our weekly picks for Bristol this week. So let's get into what the standings look like before we do that. I had the first DNF. I've been talking so well about how we've been doing with our picks, And I had the first DNF of the year as Bubba Wallace finished behind the wall after completely totaling his own race car, trying to go after Carson Hocevar, finishing 36th. And it's funny because the 23 gave me 23 points. So I have 23 points on the season. I'm last in the standings. I get the first pick. The second pick will end up going to Cory, who almost got winning points because Denny Hamlin was the dominant guy all day. But Denny Hamlin just ended up getting him top 5 points plus the weekly win, which got him 5 points for the week. And he is sitting at 26 points, getting that weekly win. And then Tyler ran really well all day with Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson got him a top 10 and got him second place points. So he got 3 points for the week, and he is currently at 27 points with the lead. So Tyler would pick last, Cory would pick second, I would pick first, and I would like to also note that Tyler has still not used his Hail Mary bonus, and this week and next week is his last opportunities to use this Hail Mary bonus. We'll have to see if he attempts it this week. So I'm going to end up picking first, and I'm going to pick the guy on my shirt. I'm going to pick Young Money, Kyle Larson. I'm going to pick Kyle Larson to win at Bristol Motor Speedway, not this weekend, but next weekend. And then on next weekend's show, if people forget, we will go through the weekly picks again. I will say who our picks were, and I'll go through the standings again at the end of the show next week. But Kyle Larson, he's going to be my pick, the driver of the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports, which sends it to Cory. Cory, who is your pick to win at Bristol Motor Speedway?
My pick to win next week at Bristol is the number 20 C Bell.
I think that's a good pick. Christopher Bell, who I think Christopher Bell has actually had a pretty strong start to the season. He's looked really good. He's just been kind of doing what Elliott usually does, honestly, running anywhere between like 5th and 10th. He's just being very consistent to start the year for the most part. So probably a really good pick. Christopher Bell, the driver of the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing, is Cory's pick. And now we'll send it over to Tyler. Tyler, who is your pick to win at Bristol Motor Speedway?
My pick for Bristol is going to be Mr. Willie B to keep it rolling for Hendrick.
So you heard it here. Back-to-back for Hendrick Motorsports is Tyler's pick. He's going to have William Byron, the driver of the number 24 for Hendrick Motorsports, win at Bristol Motor Speedway. And before I ask Tyler if he's going to use the Hail Mary bonus, just to go through our picks one more time, I have decided to pick Kyle Larson, the driver of the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports, to win. Cory has decided to pick Christopher Bell, the driver of the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing, to win. And then Tyler has picked Willie B, William Byron, the driver of the number 24 for Hendrick Motorsports, to win. And now I pan the question to Tyler. Tyler, are we going to attempt our Hail Mary bonus this week for Bristol?
No, we're saving it for Kansas.
Okay, you're taking the risk. Tyler's taking a risk there, folks. We'll see if Tyler will end up being able to use his Hail Mary bonus at Kansas Speedway, not next week, but when we get to Kansas here in a couple of weeks, he will get his attempt at the Hail Mary bonus right then and there. So that'll actually do it for this week's edition of Hit the Pacecar. Let me send it to the boys for last word. Tyler, do we have any last words for the people before we head on our way?
Alligator, keep it rolling.
You heard it here. Yeah, Little Gator.
Question.
What's up?
Quick question. I swear, and it could be my memory, but last week, didn't you say that you couldn't pick Willie B because you've already picked him, or am I confusing somebody else?
No, I couldn't pick. No, I couldn't pick.
Yeah, Tyler can't pick Willie B, actually. He already took Willie B. You're correct.
I was
Was it
about to say,
Willie B?
I was like, I think you tried picking Willie B last
You picked
week.
William Byron at Phoenix.
Did I pick Willie at Phoenix?
Yep, the drivers you have taken so far are Chase Elliott, Michael McDowell, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson.
Oh shit! I did not remember using Willie B.
Man's gonna have to pick Ty Gibbs.
Baby Gibbs.
Oh, never in a million years would I use Ty Gibbs. Fuck that.
So we're having we're having an audible here because Tyler's is forced to audible here.
Shit. You know what? Give me Tyler Reddick because that's a safe pick no matter what you're doing.
There you go. Okay, now you heard it there. So Tyler has decided to pick Tyler Reddick to win his race. So just to go through the picks one more time again, Tyler unfortunately couldn't pick Willie B because he did already pick him at Phoenix. Good catch on that, Cory, because I didn't notice that. So good catch on that. Tyler ends up picking Tyler Reddick, the driver of the number 45 for 2311 Racing. I have decided to pick Kyle Larson, the driver of the number 5. And then, of course, Cory has picked Christopher Bell, the driver of the number 20. And now I'll send it to Cory for his last words, and then we'll be on our way. Cory, any last words for the people?
Let's all have a good weekend at Rockingham. Woo!
Yeah, let's have a great weekend at Rockingham. Hopefully Rockingham is back on the Cup Series schedule in 2027. And then also have a great Easter if you celebrate the holiday. I hope everybody has a great Easter Sunday as well. Go relax. And there won't be any racing on Sunday. There might be something on Flow Racing somewhere that you could put on. But hopefully everybody enjoys the Easter weekend. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry. They're the Pacecar boys. And I'm saying peace.